I'd say I was more superficial when I started TikTok versus now. Like, I say I was a bit more arrogant and maybe not as like caring. Like, I don't give a fuck who you are. I'm gonna do and say what I want. And if you say something stupid, I don't have any remorse for you. I'll say whatever I want to you. That's how I was when I first started.
What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Please follow my Instagram at RussoLifts. Just in case something happens to this YouTube channel, you can follow, message, and you can watch my daily story content on Instagram. I'll see you there. What is up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back to another episode of BS Clout Grab. Let's hit the thumbs up for the algo, and I'm sure the comment section of this one will be lit. But first, got the ASMR sip, got some tomato juice because I'm on prep trying to maintain muscle fullness. So for all you ASMR fiends, here's the $1,000 Sennheiser mic for your listening pleasures. All right. Welcome to another one of the BS Clout Grab series. I will be reorganizing this channel into playlists so you guys can watch the type of content you want, and I can see which playlist gets the most popular to dump the most time into. But today we're going to be reacting to D-Tren on the MOGCAST, which is Sushbra and James English podcast, and just kind of my history with D-Tren and my reaction and thoughts moving into him on the podcast. So let's rewind time a little, give everyone a little context on why I'm making this video. And if you guys don't want to watch this video all the way through, this is the official invitation for him to come on Blunt Biohacking with me and Alec. And I'll have Andrew throw up a card to one of the Blunt Biohacking podcasts if you want to check that out. But this is the invite and this is my prognosis. Anyways, right? D-Tren blew up on TikTok. I don't know much about him, to be honest, because I'm not a TikTok guy. I'm kind of an OG with the YouTube, but I'm not hating on TikTok. That's the way to pop off, and that's what he did. As far as, you know, being linked him, my thoughts on him, you know, I try and stay in my own lane. Obviously not anymore because it's just, Bruce, I don't care at this point with the BS Clout Grab, but like, I'm not gonna go pooping on some TikToker's parade. But I was linked his stuff a bunch of times, and then, you know, I was going through shit at that time, right? I was coming off the suicide attempt, which I made the suicide attempt video. I was in a beef with Leo and Boston Lloyd at the time. I was in a, you know, turmoil with my 9-year relationship. I was fixing that, and I almost got arrested. So comment Russo court at the end of the month. Good luck. A lot of emotions on top of being fat and depressed, sad cunt Russo. So that was like what I was going through at the time when these interactions started taking place, and I was just trying to collect my fire again and arise from the ashes because the Phoenix fucking died, right? I was crawling for it at the time. You know, when those situations happen, when you go down, you kind of remember the people that kicked you while you're down, and you remember the people that lifted you up. You're still a man, you get up on your own, but like, I'm there for you, you know. Jack West message me all the time, text message me if I'm doing okay. Real homie, right? A real person. D-Tren, I don't know his deal, which I'll go into this later, but he was trolling on my Instagram. Again, he can do what he wants, I don't care. Obviously, you know, every troll I like to clap back for some algorithm engagement, and because I've fed off the trolls for all these years. Remember, an OG, I've been doing this exact content for over 5 years. So I always fed off the hate, right? No one thought I'd make it to this point. So it's energy I like to collect and channel. But I was always kind of confused. You know, he's commenting on my family pictures and stuff. It was nothing outlandish compared to the other troll that came out, you know, after me and made death threats. I'm not really trying to make D-Tren out like he's crazy, but, you know, it was obviously some weird thing. And, you know, people would link me that he was on TikTok live, you know, talking about me. And at this point, you know, I didn't know him or make any type of noise about him or throw any shade at him at all, to be honest. And I remember I was being linked him because his beginning TikToks were like, oh, you know, you only need like Tren as your first cycle, right? I'm on Tren right now and I love it. And I'll go into the reaction on this MOGCAST, but like that was his character, you know, the jock douche alpha character on TikTok. And again, I'm not against that. I think superficial characters work great for clout, worked great from him, and his rise is nothing to laugh about. And in my opinion, it's deserved. I'm not here to be a player hater. I'm giving you the context and then going into my points. So that's kind of like my interaction with him. As far as him commenting on my shitty family genetics and everything, you know, all that has been deleted. You know, I really didn't understand the trolling at the time. I remember like he would spend all this time writing comments back because like with a troll, people think I'm like, oh, it's so under my skin, where it's like, oh, this is really fun. I want to see how long I can hold this guy on my page. And it's not just with D-Tren, but I remember like my grandmother was passing away during this time as well. And I like, yeah, because he would chirp every single post I did as I was getting back in shape, as I was fat. I needed gyno surgery anyway. So like I wasn't trying to get skinny super quick. And like, bro, like this is like not the time to be kicking me. And, you know, he said like, oh, just know all this trolling and good fun. Like I get that, but like why are you wasting the energy trolling, especially when you channeled all the energy to yourself and now you completely popped off? I don't know. Long story short, he pops off, gets signed with Young LA coupon code Russo. And you know, I'm kind of pissy, right? Because like now I think of him in the aspect of his mentality of like, oh, like Russo's irrelevant now, I'm bigger than him now. That's probably like the mentality I assume he has, just based on the other interactions I've had with him. But anyways, you know, I chirped him in the Young LA group chat to see if he wanted smoke 3 times. Nothing. No smoke, no nothing, doesn't want anything to do with me. And that could be from the angle I think of, or that he just maybe thought about what he did, thought about the situation I was in. You know, it was just like hell on earth that I was crawling through while this dude was kicking me. Moving forward, you know, he doesn't want no smoke. I look on my Instagram to link these comments to show the type of character he was before, and they're removed. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but yeah, that's moving forward. You know, he was this type of character. I felt like he was putting on a show because that was his rise. And I'm going to play the MOGCAST clip where, you know, his personality is different. So let's go into the guy who says that, you know, every teenager should start Tren as his first cycle. So I'm at the MOGCAST, I'm at the 12:15 mark, and I will be playing it at 1.5 times speed.
And your dosages of the cycle, but yeah,
or where you get it from.
yeah. So what turns you on Tren? Because you blew up off of Tren content.
Yeah.
So what made you start Tren, and then what made you start the Tren content?
Well, the main reason why I started Tren maybe like my 4th cycle.
Okay, to go into the Tren content, anytime you put Tren in the title, it just pops off. You can see my shitty first Tren cycle on YouTube did amazing as far as views, algorithm, and reach. And Tren is that like iconic roid that everyone knows about it. Oh, it's Tren. You know, like the most androgenic compound in existence, in my opinion. Anytime you do, you know, a Tren type content, it's gonna pop off. So in my opinion, clout move, this was very smart of him to go in this direction when it came to growing his brand.
My 3rd or 4th, and I was actually doing a bodybuilding show. I wanted to actually compete, and I was kind of fluffy.
You should.
So this goes against him on TikTok, these old TikToks of him saying everyone should go on Tren. So in my opinion, Tren should only be used in a contest situation because it's like running knives through your kidneys. It binds in the brain, it passes through the blood-brain barrier, ruins your personality, and not to mention the blood pressure side effects, but mainly it's just like insanely kidney toxic on top of all the other horrible side effects. But in my opinion, I agree with D-Tren, right? If he's going to compete, do a show, then Tren definitely needs to play a role because Tren is the roid that sensitizes your AR to IGF the best. So there's really no replacement for that necessary evil, in my opinion. But this goes against him saying everyone should just start off in the fucking deep end on the compound that fucks up the emotions the most, on the compound that creates the craziest mood swings and could ruin said teenager's life. And this is coming from OG Russo, documented all his cycles, but focused on like less is more, start with something weaker, and then if you still continue to be enhanced down the line, by all means, like by a couple cycles in, you could play around with trend, but I normally go with the mentality and route of, you know, just dip your feet in the water, see if being enhanced for you, see if you want to pay all these consequences. If you do, you can go down the road and eventually you'll get to a trend cycle. His original content, that what got him like the attention was him being like the juiced alpha douche, saying that everyone should do trend right off the bat, where he's like, I only wanted to use this for a competition, which is correct. It doesn't line up.
Coming off of, yeah, maybe one day.
Everyone comment D-Tren compete.
I was coming off the test D-Ball cycle and I was just too fluffy. I was like 250 at like 20 years old, 252. I was like, man, fuck, I need to like cut up. So I got some trend and I quickly got.
So in my opinion, he's doing it right being fluffy and putting on his size in his younger years. So I'll have Andrew throw up pictures of me being the bloat lord at 265, at 5'11 and a half, 6 foot. I believe D-Tren is almost as tall as Sue, so much bigger frame. But you know, him being fluffy and putting on his size in his early years of being enhanced, you know, him like, I feel like he has the perception of like he has to constantly be shredded for the internet, when him putting on all that size was definitely the smart play, because you definitely don't want to be doing that in your later 20s. You want to get the size over with, but this is what got him on trend.
Got like
You were 252.
yeah, on like 500 tests, like 20 people. 250 pounds. I was really fluffy though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know you ever got that heavy though.
No, I've been to 255 before.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. And people like, don't do it. I'm like, I don't care what you have to tell me. So I did it, and I fell in love with it really quickly because it gave me the most gains progress I've ever seen, and it quickly leaned me out better than before when I first started off like tests and D-ball.
So yeah, you're always gonna love trend, right? Most androgenic compound, hypermasculinization compound, and it sensitizes your body to IGF. That's why every single IFBB Pro cycle has to have trend in it, because there's nothing that quite behaves like it or replaces it as far as the sensitization to insulin-like growth factor 1. So I can see how him at that age, even though he was massive at, you know, 255, the visual perception in his brain of instantly hardening and dialing in. I remember when I did trend, I was like, wow, I could see how this would get extremely addicting to someone who is chasing that grainy look all the time, as well as the mental side effects, which they all touch on next.
I was eating very clean and I was still very watery, like loaded all the time because my estrogen was high, and I don't respond to the best estrogen, you know, from testosterone or D-ball.
Same.
When I got on trend, my skin cleared up. I got a lot leaner. My muscles looked a lot better, bigger, more aesthetic, and I was like, wow, this shit's for me. The only issue is it fucked my nips a bit.
And your mental eventually, right?
Yeah, down the line, but it did mess with it then. It's just, I had more positives out of it.
So D-Tren, I'm sure he knows this, he's not dumb. I've watched some of his content, but he had prolactin-based gyno issues. So I did a video with Alec talking about pramipexole on the Blunt Biohacking podcast that he's invited on if he wants to choose to.
But the negatives at the time, I was making all these unheard of gains that
Yeah.
were so quick. I looked so good. I was like, who gives a fuck? I look good anyway.
And when you first started trend, it was like you get, for one, you get the physical aspect of just looking fucking sick, and then
Yeah.
two, you also get kind of the god complex mental
Yeah,
aspect.
the edginess.
But for everything in life, for every high,
So James makes an amazing point, right? And I'm not gonna throw D-Tren under the bus. So I've had friends in real life, you know, they come to me like, hey, I'm doing a contest, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if you wanna be competitive, you probably need Tren. Super nice to me, cordial, fan of my content. They go on the Tren, personality switch. Personality switch are mean mugging me in the gym. They're sizing me up in the gym. They're slightly antisocial. I did a video on discussing my personal mental side effects of trend, but the God complex is real. There was another 19 or 18-year-old who went to my gym who went on trend, ended up getting in a confrontation with the local steroid dealer at my gym. Like literally almost got his arm broken by the dude because he was being such a trend up douche. And then later in that summer, I remember he went out at a bar and he had a black eye the next day, and I'm like, what happened? He's like, oh, I got sucker punched. Trend makes dudes with glass egos, like now they have the superiority complex. Like it's very hard to control. Someone else will be at the wheel. Someone else is at the wheel. When I would go on trend, my bipolarism would come out insanely. And this is someone like me who's had bipolarism my entire life. And I've always had to control that side of me. So I'm very accustomed to when my emotions go like that on how to handle them. I cannot imagine a young person dealing with those emotional fluctuations unless someone is telling them like, hey, you're changing. Hey, not trying to be a douche here, but your personality is completely morphing. And I see this all the time with trend. And that is really the addictive property, is actually that trend. You're getting high on it. It's a drug drug you're getting high on. It's changing your brain chemistry so much, you're getting high on it, and that's why you get addicted. It's the visual perception, sure, but it's the mental perception of feeling like you're God. I remember there was a guy who DM'd me, and he's like, I was taking so much DTREN, you know, I felt like I could just like walk in front of a car and like stop it. Like that's how bad the God complex gets on high dosages. So just keep that in mind, that it's not the kidney toxicity, which is horrible, right? Horrible for the kidneys. It's not the blood pressure side effects. It's not even the aggression of DTREN. It's the complete morphing of your personality as it's passing through the blood-brain barrier and binding all up in the brain. It's so neurotoxic.
There's a low. So eventually, you keep pushing the trend, you keep chasing that God complex, and eventually it just doesn't work.
The more I'd run it, the less good I'd feel. Like my last time I ran DRASTIC a few weeks ago, I felt like depressed. Majority of it. Like some days.
So I gotta point out this hypocrisy, right? I see D-Tren as a guy who blew up quickly. I didn't blow up quickly. You know, this has been a slow burner for me. I'm not trying to compare myself directly from him, but he got like this, right? I feel like he was putting on that character for a while, and the trend was probably playing games on his brain for sure. Like why this guy was in my comment section arguing with me when, you know, he could just blow up, right? I don't understand why he's diverting negative energy into my life, which is already so fucking negative. And I've already had so much on my plate that, you know, this guy who could potentially be a collab down the road is trolling me in a sense. Like I always think trolling, I should be like snarking and laughing, or it should be insane trolling. Like I had a troll 2 days ago who looked up my girlfriend's address, looked up my girlfriend's father, like went above and beyond. Like that's crazy trolling. Someone with a following like D-Tren, I don't get the point of spreading negativity when he could just pop off. And I'm never a player hater. I don't hate on players. You hate the game, not the player, right? So it's a lot of hypocrisy in my opinion, because like I go and check his content now and he's like, I'm all about helping people. I'm all about lifting people up, and I hope everyone has a great day. Like when I was coming off my suicide attempt in the fucking gutter in the mud, like he was just sitting there kicking me for no reason. I wonder if that had to do with his trend abuse at the time, because that was during, you know, I think his abuse of DTREN, or when he was trying to get away from it. And this goes into what I tied in with my personal friends in real life, watching their personalities just morph away, right? This seems like D-Tren 2.0, and this is why I would like to interact with D-Tren 2.0 and ask him about D-Tren 1.0, who, you know, was a completely different character, right? He's obviously harm mitigating in the way he's talking about on this podcast. I think he had self-realization that going on TikTok that has like the younger viewership and saying everyone should just start off with the strongest shit probably wasn't the greatest idea. Got him a lot of attention, sure, got him a lot of clout, but he didn't want to play that character forever. And this is what I wanted to highlight.
Paranoid too.
I wouldn't get paranoid. It's just I just felt depressed, like just like kind of like no emotions.
So he felt depressed, right? If you don't know, steroids drastically fuck up your dopamine response. That's why if you ever meet a super, I'm not talking about D-Tren, I'm talking about like a super juiced up IFBB pro, most of them have emotional issues. And there was a bodybuilder that Leo in Longevity linked to me that like he basically had no emotions. So you always see that you should be kind of facilitating dopamine. Prami is a drug that can help you with dopamine. But yeah, D-Tren is completely right in this situation, saying he would be more depressed. Relating it back to me, right, when I would use DTREN, you know, I would become antisocial, right? I don't want to talk to you unless it was for business, unless you're really close to me. Other than that, like if someone wanted to make small banter with me in the gym and just be friendly, like no, like I was super cold on DTREN, and that's what a 500 androgenic compound does. That's passing through the blood-brain barrier and binding with the brain. Anytime I use DTREN, I'll let my editor know who's interacting with me that I'm using that shit. I obviously let my girlfriend know, and I let my parents know, right? It's no joke. Literally night and day personality morph, and D-Tren is off the trend now. This is a completely different person talking on the MOGCAST than the dude I was being linked to talking about me on TikTok live, right?
But you got paranoid, right, Brendan? Yeah, I was getting paranoid. When I was on, I pushed it to 700 a week for 2 weeks. I was hitting him.
So you're on 700 trend. No comment.
Come up and I was like, yo, like, this was when I was binging and I was eating a lot of food and I was kind of out of control. And I was like, yo, I'm trying to stay lean while eating all this food.
I was worried about you, bro.
Yeah, no, I was also like ripping Xanax and stuff like that. It was bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Trend altering brain chemistry, stacking Xanax on top. No comment.
We should get into
do not fuck with Xanax. But yeah, so we were binging. Wes and I were going out eating, and I had asked you, yo, what should I run? Because I want to stay relatively lean while I'm eating 6,000 plus calories a day. And you were like, yeah, run Tren. And I was like, okay, what dose? And we were like fucking running around 800, 700 milligrams. So I said, fuck it, 700 milligrams. So I did that for about 2 weeks.
So 700 milligrams is an insane dosage of Tren. My 2 cents. If you're competing in the IFBB or upper levels of the NPC, go for it. Recreational Tren use, don't even recommend it. But if you're like, fuck you, Russo, I'm gonna do it anyways. 300 to 400 ACE, maybe a little bit higher Tren E, like 600 Tren E max. Anything above that is going to ruin your brain chemistry. I will reference an old video I did with at Bourbon Fit, at BBURIN. I'll see if Andrew can pull him up. This was a prospect pro, and I was linked him. He was the chillest dude, and he was a Boston Lloyd type character. He told me he would do 1,200 Tren Ace. I remember I did a video, got deleted off YouTube, where I was just like, that was the most crazy Tren cycle I ever heard a young, 20-something-year-old doing. And I had him on the channel. I interviewed him. Like I said, amazing dude, super humble. And I asked him, on 400, 500 Tren Ace, my bipolarism is so bad that I'm just kind of trying to catch myself all the time before I blurt something out. What is 1,200 like? And I remember he went into how when he was on 1,200, and this was a guy who wanted to compete so bad, shit ton of potential to compete. I'm hoping Andrew still can find his videos. He was flatting 405 like it was nothing, and just a freak of nature, a genetic freak of nature on top of the extreme cycling. And I remember he told me he's like, well, I would only go out to the grocery store at night. I wouldn't interact in public, and he was so antisocial, it was unbelievable. But he was stuck on the Tren. He's said he was mentally zoned in and addicted. I'll see if I can find my interview video with him, but it's reminiscent of why are you going such high Tren if you're not in a contest prep situation? That's always what I say on my Instagram Q&As at Russo Lifts is unless you're in a contest prep situation, stay away from Tren. It's nothing but bad news really, unless you're trying to sensitize your receptors to IGF-1, you're in an extreme caloric deficit, and you're trying to get to 6% and hold the most tissue possible. That's where Tren plays a role. Other than that, the look can be replicated around 12% with much less damaging drugs. I did want to add Bourbon Fit. I hope he's doing okay. I remember he messaged me that he had to get off all steroids. His heart was completely fucked. He had to get ectocardiogram done, and it was from all his Tren abuse. I kind of want to get him back on the channel. This just kind of sparked the light bulb in my head. I forgot about him, and yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of him. So if you guys know him, have him reach out to me. I'd love to feature him and have him say his story.
But by the end of that 2 weeks, that was the first time in my life where I was paranoid, because I was talking to somebody at the time, and I'm constantly checking their following, and constantly checking photos that trying to be yo, why are you engaging on this person's post? Would you actually say that to them?
So this is reminding me of D-Tren getting irked, trolling me, I guess. I didn't understand why he's commenting, his little minions would add him, and then he'd come and troll for a little bit, and I never understood it. You can just do you really need to leech cloud off me? You can just easily blow up yourself is what I thought. But I love the back and forth. As always, I love feeding off troll energy, so it was interesting. But this D-Tren and this version of him, I don't think would be wasting time, calling me fat at 265 plus, Sure, I was fluffy, but I was still lifting like crazy, and I'm gonna compete at 195. So I don't know.
Yeah. Really? And they'd be like, "Yo, what are you talking
very
about?"
Confrontational.
Yeah,
very out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I was super paranoid that this girl was cheating on me or something like that, or this girl's God knows what.
Right.
My mind's just throwing all these ideas in.
See, I feel because I've been bipolar my whole life and born with a demon inside me, I can regulate this gear a lot better. I feel when you have a normal personality like Sush and you combine that insane androgenic compound, it just takes the wheel so much more. For me, when I go into an episode, I must hold my chi and contain that, right? And I do that when I'm on high amounts of androgens. And not just Sush, but my friends in real life, you just see their personality just go like that.
I was yo, this is 1000% the Tren. Because as soon as I stopped it, 3 days later, it took 3 days, that mental was out of my head.
When did you stop DTREN?
I would say the beginning of this year, or no,
Okay.
like the end of last year.
Yeah, because I've noticed. Have you noticed we haven't gotten into a single, even like mild argument for like since I got back from Dubai?
Yeah,
And I think for one, I was on. So I only made one video on this, but I was on DECA, which is a 19 NOR, and I was on no testosterone. I was on DECA and a tiny little bit of B-ball, and I made a video about it. And I was like, all right, I look great, and it's making me a lot of gains. It is making me kind of fluffy, but it's also making me very fucking depressed. And I would just be lethargic. I would have no motivation.
So for those who don't know, right, I'm on androgen phenylpropionate, which is short ester DECA, and James is completely right. Definitely brings your mood downer. You know, it's a depressing drug, and yeah, I agree with James on
Do
that.
anything, and I just had low self-esteem. I just didn't think like I was downing myself a lot, and it took me a while because I've never had any issues mentally with gear. So it took me a while to actually trace that to the gear I was taking. I kept thinking, well, maybe it's because of this, maybe it's because of that. But then I realized like all these other components.
Okay, James saying he never had mental issues with gear. Your androgens completely impact your mood. Androgen level in general impacts your mood. Under 200 test, not confident, anxiety, low drive, low vigor, low sexual, like seeking sexual intercourse, raise the androgen level, more confidence, douchier, you know, more drive, more mental drive, and then more sexual chasing tail, right? So him saying that him fluctuating his androgens never really impacted his mood. This is the first time he noticed it, right? Even when I took shit like Osterine, like I'm super OCD, like how am I feeling? What side effects? Like when I was documenting, like every single androgen had a different impact on my mood. Like even if you go on TRT, that's gonna impact your mood. If you come off TRT, that's gonna impact your mood. If you're completely natural and the optimal body fat, making a lot of natural testosterone, that's gonna impact your mood. If you get stressed out at work, you enter a divorce, your cortisol goes through the roof, your hormones get nuked, that's gonna impact your mood. Him saying that he never noticed it, I guess you're just not really checking those checks, right? And this relates back to me being bipolar. I constantly monitor my mood. That's why I'm monotone. I really control my emotions because when I get worked up, it's hard to calm down.
So my life are actually pretty good. The only thing out of whack left must be my hormones. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna try high test. The reason I was staying away from it was because I didn't want to take an AI because it's unhealthy. But I said, you know what? I'm willing to minutely sacrifice my health to save my mental health because this just isn't fucking worth it anymore.
Yeah, I saw you talk to me about that. I actually started testosterone.
Yeah.
You told me. I think it was one of the first people you told.
I had nothing against high test. I mean, I would have loved to run it that whole time, but I just didn't want to take an AI because it's unhealthy. But eventually it's like,
Works.
you know, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you know, maybe I'll shave a couple years off my life, but at least.
All right, in my opinion, the high test is a dirty ass compound, low selectivity, low binding affinity, and it just binds with the prostate and shit. So going high test, in my opinion, from a biohacking standpoint, isn't the best move for James. My 2 cents would have been like 250 to 500 test with a more selective, uplifting mood androgen on top, right? Something like Anavar, something like Dianabol, in my opinion, makes me confident. Just take the DECA out. The DECA is the obvious issue with the mood. But going to blasting tests, it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's kind of the most unselective, dirtiest compound of them all. So I'd like to see him use it as a base, 500 base max, and then add something more selective on top towards the goal that he's trying to achieve at the time. As far as using an AI, I've made videos on how AIs are poison. In the sense of James saying AIs are super bad for you, not necessarily in this certain situation. Like AIs are super bad for you if you're not, you know, tracking where your estrogen is at. Like if you're doing like I'm at a bullshit cookie cutter TRT clinic. Like if I'm just taking the AI they told me to take when I might not need to take it, then you're fucking up your health. When you're doing 1,000 tests, there's gonna be a shit ton of estrogen conversion. There's nothing around that. So you will need an AI to regulate that. And as long as you modulate the AI correctly and leave your E2 in the correct range, what damage are you really doing? And that's the hypocrisy I pointed out in myself on the AIs or poison video, which I will link up there.
I won't be fucking depressed. Like, it's really not worth being depressed in my early 20s. Like, that's the worst fucking thing ever.
Shave some years off your life with DECA trend.
That's true too. But I wasn't taking
Feel like
trend.
shit.
I was taking DECA D-ball. But so simultaneously, as I came off DECA and I switched over to test, I started feeling much better. Brandon also switched over to, or switched off of DTREN. And before that, some of it also might have been the the calorie deficit you were in for a long ass time. So let's not discount that. But aside that point, we would kind of just bicker here and there. We would get into little arguments. But then all of a sudden, we got off the 19 Nors. We just got onto. We're both on Just Test right now, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just been like smooth sailing.
Yeah, and I will say that right now. So right now I'm like 250 tests a week, and that's been like 2-3 weeks. And then I throw in like this week because you're here. I've been throwing in like Superdrol or like Anamar.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, it's literally just been tests. I've been feeling like my mental, like honestly, it's the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah.
Like I'm balancing, working out, 250 tests, drinking on the weekends, like keeping it balanced, and I've been feeling healthy and super just happy.
I feel like there's a really fine line where something that is really close to overwhelming you and kind of ruining your whole day or week, you can get just below the point of being overwhelmed when you're managing your hormones better and running a low dose of shit, but you can get just above the point of being overwhelmed when you're running a shitload of stuff. So you don't really connect the dots and think to yourself, oh, this is definitely the hormones. But if you have like 100 of those scenarios every day where every single time you're just getting pushed slightly over the mental threshold, it can really like impact your quality of like mental health, because you're just constantly being like, this is too much for me, this is too much for me, this is too much for me.
This is excellent, how James is explaining this, but this should be perceived the minute you go on synthetic androgens at all that your mood is going to be more harder to regulate. I'm glad they're putting the dots together, but like the minute I did Ostrine, I knew I was taking my brain chemistry into my own hands. And my experience with psychedelics really gave me the insight on like, wow, like my mood is just chemicals in my brain. Like when I would trip on acid and shrooms, like I was like, wow, it's literally like all my emotions are just impacted by my brain chemistry. And when you start augmenting and biohacking brain chemistry, aka using nootropics, using psychedelics, using synthetic androgens that pass through the blood-brain barrier, you have to expect that it will be harder to regulate.
Just when you manage your hormones, it's like, I can deal with that, I can deal with that, I can deal with that, right? And it kind of just like levels you out. So all I know is that, I won't say I'm done with DECA forever, but for the foreseeable future, I think I'm just sticking with test.
Yeah, and I've touched on this in my recent video, but mostly my thing is like, at least with the career that I'm choosing and the future that I'm trying to obtain, I'm trying to stay away from like blasting gear. Like I'll probably never touch DTREN again in my life. I don't think I ever will.
Really?
Yeah, because unless I'm like for some reason wanted to compete or like step on stage, I don't think I'll ever touch DTREN again.
You think you never? What's the percentage chance you
Smart man.
think you'll ever step on stage?
25%. So good amount, quarter.
That's relatively high.
Yeah, I would say a quarter, like 25% chance that I step on stage within the next 5 years. And if it's not within the next 5 years, it won't be ever. Life.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now I'm just chilling on 250 tests. A little bit of enhanced TRT. Making gains.
For fun.
Yeah, it's for fun.
TRT, yeah.
It's for fun, just to feel good, and tossing a couple orals here. And there.
I mean, for the sake of honesty, yeah, I'll throw in Anadrol 2 or 3 times a week at 25 milligrams if I know a hard workout's coming up. But I don't really consider that like part of my cycle. So what does that add up to? Like 50 milligrams a week on average of Anadrol compared to 500 milligrams a week of tests.
It's not comparable that way. Not at all.
The test is what's actually like building muscle. The Anadrol is just like when I'm feeling lethargic and kind of have to like push myself to even get to the gym. And I know it's going to be a hard workout. I'm like, I'll just take some Anadrol. And then I inevitably have a fucking amazing workout because of it.
Yeah.
I'm not against Anadrol usage, but you're fucking up your blood pressure and fluctuating every time you use Anadrol, and it's obviously methylated. Way more stress on the body every time you use Anadrol. So you can't compare 50 milligrams of Anadrol to 500 tests. That's like comparing a little bit of halotestin to 500 tests. There's different anabolic androgenic ratings, and the dosage like mg per mg is not totally comparable.
And my focus now is more on expanding and evolving my content and like my brands and shit like that rather than the bodybuilding.
Okay, this is, I got my point across, but basically what I wanted to bring to light is that this D-Tren guy, I got no hate towards him. I just push people up. I hope he goes to the fucking moon. I don't care, right? I don't hate on players. I wish him the best, but I'm just pointing out this hypocrisy, right? Behind the scenes, he was kicking me while I was down. That's not being a Sally Saab story about it. I'm just pointing out this character switch, right? The character switch, right? When you're down, you remember who kicks you and you remember who lifts you up. Flat out linear time, aka your perception on the rate of time when you're depressed. Like think about when you run a mile in high school, how long that 5 to 10 minutes feels, right? When you're depressed, that amount of time feels longer. You know, you can perceive time, you know, at different rates essentially. And during that time, like, I was crawling for it. Every day was a struggle, and this guy was wasting his time when, in my opinion, he didn't have to waste his time. Didn't want any smoke after. I like the new D-Tren 2.0. You know, I like that he's branching away. Like, he's still like his character. I still like it. I still think it's a good look. But, you know, when I'm not being linked like, you should do Tren your first cycle. Russo, what do you think about this? What do you think I think about this? That's the dumbest fucking advice ever to give someone who doesn't know how to train like D-Tren at that age, who doesn't know how to eat like D-Tren at that age, and who doesn't have any potential like D-Tren at that age, to just start blasting Tren and have all the side effects he himself talked about. Like, he hyped it up like it was the coolest shit ever. You're badass and edgy. You're a douche like D-Tren if you follow my ways. All backtracked, fake clout character. And now the real D-Tren comes out once he gets to the top. And I like to see that. I like to see evolution and maturity. I'm just pointing it out and saying it how it is. And when he's talking about me on TikTok live, bro, I'm an OG. I'm one of the original fucking trailblazers of this type of content, right? I'm sure you've seen my shit. You've been linked to my shit. So this is the makeup video, I guess the truce video. This is the official invitation onto the Blunt Biohacking podcast with my co-host Alec, aka my coach. So this is it. You know, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. This is my perception and my, you know, just the hypocrisy point out. You can point out all the hypocrisy you want with me, but at the end of the day, I'm blunt real. And yeah, I was a sad fag cunt for a while, but if you're in my shoes, you'd be like, all right, I kind of get it. And 2022 is the comeback. Russo to the moon. I'll see you in my next one, and you guys can get them on the fucking podcast. Peace.